Taught a course, one of the 3 microeconomics courses last fall through winter. These are just the summary statistics. We videotaped 8 to 12 video segments per week, over 22,000 enrollments, completion rate about normal, 4%, and then Eric gauges how involved people are along the way. Roughly half of the people bookmark your course, but then never come back to it. So that's something to get used to. We tried some novel things. For example, the top 100 of the 931 that completed, we invited them back to campus to take an in-person exam to see who was behind the computer. And we offered a full scholarship if they got in. So they had to pass the exam, top performer, and then they also had to meet our admissions requirements. Eric, if you switch it. Yeah, we're all doing it here.
That's okay. Go.
Got it. Okay. Observations. It's much more a complement to what we do than a substitute. There were similar worries with radio and TV that we'd be out of business. That hasn't proven to be the case. In the 30s, people thought you'd just sit at home, listen to the top political science professor from Princeton, and you'd get credit. That hasn't happened. We've learned how to use those other media to supplement what we do. And if anything, for me, it underscored the value, the transformational experience that happens here on campus, and how this gives us greater visibility and ways to improve that transformational experience. The visibility benefits, and this got stressed at the last Phelps colloquium, can't be underestimated. The number of video downloads, the exposure to the university is significant. The more interactive, the better. I would make it a point to show up in the chat rooms at least a couple hours each week. And when I'd show up, it was as if I was walking on water. So it still doesn't happen a lot. This is by inference. You'd get comments back. I enrolled for this course at Wharton, and we never saw the faculty member, that he or she just videotaped what they did in the classroom, and that's all they did in a PhD student. So a little bit of interaction goes a long way. We tried to spice it up in a number of ways too, so the best example a student would come up with, and they voted on each other's examples of a concept. We'd get them a free textbook copy as a way to keep them engaged. If I was doing it over again too, I'd figure out a way to put people in teams so as to better harness the peer effect of making sure that they completed the course. The more dynamic the presentation, and Daphne talked about it with the person testing out physics concepts, so the more, as opposed to just pointing at a screen or seeing just your face the entire time, the more you can spice it up, the more you keep the audience. It does make you a better teacher. I've been teaching for 30 plus years. Microeconomics is the course I started with, but it forced me to think about in 6-minute segments, how do I boil down this concept to the best possible explanation and using the best possible example. Didn't have the luxury of enough retakes, so we literally would do each week 8 to 12 segments. But if I was revising the course, I'd go back. This one didn't work so well. I'd rather get a new example. It gives you the luxury to do that. Although even small things like what tie I'm wearing, so that you're consistent throughout when you're covering a particular concept. It does make you a better teacher too in ways I didn't think of. We have a strategy colleague who the first time when he came to us was going to teach a strategy course. Actually watched Coursera videos of other people teaching strategy at other schools. When I was learning as a teacher, you'd get these books of exams, syllabi that people have used, and either you've experienced somebody's teaching of material through your own career. It was very hard to access video of some star teachers from around the country. This gives you the ability to do that. It can improve student learning, especially for international students, the ability to watch a concept over and over again. Our in-person students don't have that luxury, but if you're piping in from Shanghai or from Sarajevo, the ability to look and make sure you get the material correctly. This came up in one of the questions. The time commitment is not insignificant. It's not for the faint of heart. So the materials you have to assemble, which leads to the next observation, and this came out in the Phelps Colloquium, it's better on average to be older and more experienced when doing this. Have a textbook with a co-author with all the ancillary materials, charts, tables. If you've got stuff like that to draw on to help organize and make the material more interactive, it's an easier experience. You've got to put in the time on chat rooms too. So it does make a difference to the completion rate, the engagement level with students. All that said, so long as Coursera is underwriting through VCs, the platform, they're now up to 10 million learners. As Daphne said, when I was doing it, it was 5 to 6 million, so it continues to grow. If you have that platform, and we as an institution don't have to pay for the cost, it passed the benefit cost criteria. We already have one of the students that's here studying with us at Simon that became engaged through the course last year. Another one's just gone through an interview, and according to our admissions people, looks like a very strong prospect for admission for next year. Two others intimately familiar with will be applying and appear to be strong students. So just purely on that basis, with what we charge for an MBA tuition relative to the cost, the investment we made as an institution, and there'll be others would conjecture down the pipeline that I'm not aware of currently. Terrific support from Eric and his team. Can't underscore how much creativity they brought to the equation. And it's the best team I've worked with. I also had a PhD student helping me in the chat rooms with grading. They came up with a tool halfway through where instead of relying on canned graphs, I could fiddle around with the graphs and the students would see the changes I was making in difference curves or isoquants, and that made it a lot more, we got a lot of positive feedback from that change. Potential next steps. If I'm sitting in Coursera shoes and our shoes, thought of two going into today, thought of a third since then. First thing, I had the longest one, and probably the longest one that's there on the entire Coursera platform. 15 weeks is a forced march. The entire microeconomics, it averages about 6 to 8 weeks for most of the other courses. To really promote the visibility, one strategy I would take as an institution is focusing on shorter modules. 3 to 4 weeks that really highlight a strength of the institution, that get people engaged, and then lead them to want to find out more about the institution. So in Simon's shoes, our strength in finance, doing a short module on finance to highlight faculty expertise that could draw students into a Master's of Finance or an MBA program. Or we have one of the world's leading pricing centers, a short course on pricing that draws students into that. Then the other thing, and Daphne talked a little bit about this, and Karen Conlon, who's our executive MBA Executive Development Programs Director, we're moving toward a hybrid model where a quarter of the teaching is done online in our Executive MBA program as of this fall. I'd be thinking real hard if I was Coursera of starting to run some experiments with partner schools where you have the general platform, everybody can still work toward a VC, that certificate of completion. But what we also picked up is there's a strong segment out there that wants more engagement with faculty than Coursera is providing, and that would be willing to actually fly to a campus, perhaps for the opening week and the closing week. So you still do the certification at the end, you know who's taking the test. You develop the bond early on, and then they use the technology to work their way through, perhaps even giving them the option to come for the midterm. Would want to run an experiment where perhaps you charge half of what we currently do for a course to give people the option to get less in-person interaction, but enough to satisfy them and to bond them to the institution. And I think there's, conjecture is there's a significant enough market with enough lead time, so if they come from overseas, that they could clear visa-related issues, because when you're drawing international students, they also have to, for certain countries, worry about getting visas to come here and visit. So, and then the third one is at the undergrad level, given the role APs play at the high school level, the more we could align courses with faculty strength that could highlight what the U of R is very good at material that they're already exposing themselves to at the high school level, and use that as the conduit to build visibility. So that's the Reader's Digest version. See if you have any quick questions. Yeah.
So Coursera versus edX example, CS50. Have you heard of CS50?
No.
So it's everywhere, right? And it's online, YouTube. It's offered through edX, and I looked at it, comparing it to my experience with Coursera courses, and the platform for edX seems to be so much more user-friendly. The videos are also on YouTube. So I'm an auditory learner. I'm the one who has to go back and hear the stuff over and over again. And I actually am a kinesthetic learner too, so I have to be doing something in order for it to sink in. So why would you use Coursera, or a professor choose to use Coursera versus recording their lectures and just putting it online for YouTubers, and then maybe building around it like the edX kind of model is? Do you know what I mean? Because they also have shorts.
Yeah, in terms of the sheer, and Eric's got greater expertise here, Coursera is still the biggest platform out there compared to edX and Udacity and some of the other distribution mechanisms. We've used the videos now, posted them, because we have this textbook with a co-author. So if a student wants ancillary materials, Coursera has been okay, and the University of Rochester too, because we'll get visibility that way for the institution. So in addition to the printed material, students can now look at the video at their own pace if they want more of a personal touch and a different slice at the material. So nothing keeps you from doing that on Coursera that you're mentioning on these other platforms.
The time limit, if you didn't get to the videos, or if you didn't enroll in the class and engage, the videos were not enough, and then they would be taken down if you missed the class, if you will. Right?
And that's what Daphne mentioned too. The on-demand, there were people life gets in the way that we lost along the way because you've got to stick to the train schedule.
You got it. So you're good. Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say something, working on our course, a little more targeted and more of the long tail of, a little customization. And if we got 500, 1,000 students, that's phenomenal. I've only touched 500 students in 5 years, right? So 500 students would be great. And I just wonder if there's a building enthusiasm for that, or does it still get drowned out that you need to have tens of thousands of students, or you're kind of a failure, Any thoughts on that kind of customization and more targeting?
Yeah, you do get caught up, number of countries, there's this natural bias, but it still underscores the transformation that happens on campus, and the satisfaction with when you touch 100 lives in a class on campus in a very meaningful way versus when it's more at a distance and less. So I guess I'd rather work on the quality of the experience to have that come through a platform like Coursera as well as, or as close as possible to what happens here on campus. So, and I wouldn't get caught up in just 150,000, although there's some visibility benefits when you have a John Kovacs teaching and having the reach that he does that are significant for our university.
Other questions?
Yeah.
How do you know what works and what doesn't in this environment?
Yeah, that's another, when you have several thousand eyes looking at the material, and if you stay attuned to the chat room, I found out, for example, in the test bank manual, we outsourced to another author to do that for our textbook. Never realized that there were a significant number of mistakes. And when you have, had we used that more on the classroom setting, would have probably found out, but not as quickly as when you have a couple thousand people. So it does make you a better teacher in that way too. And that's something future generations will be better off because so many different eyes and brains were looking at the material. So, and you do get, if you stay tuned to the chat rooms, you do get some very good feedback, what concepts worked, where there's still questions. So.
questions? Any more?
Okay.
Mark, thank you
Sorry we ran
for
over.
sharing your